Lost Faith monologue. Today's date is Wednesday the 16th of July 2025. Let's talk about the 2020 Psyop. Some people are probably sick of hearing about this and think, why can you not move on? And some people probably haven't even spoken about it since it ended. They're not too afraid to speak about it because they can't deal with the trauma and the reality of what actually happened to them and the sick criminality of these complete lunatics and psychopaths in charge. An alleged, choose my word carefully, an alleged VIRUS alleged only exists in a computer model, a completely fake test, which the protocol for is completely fraudulent. It's meaningless. It's meaningless what this thing throws up. And it can be turned up or down in terms of how many results you might want to find. You just change the protocols and you can change the results. And then the absolute criminal mass murder on a huge scale of old people during the first wave, using killer concoctions like midazolam and morphine, and anybody who was deemed to have the thing, just following protocols, just following orders. Whoever heard that before? The mass cull of old people in care homes, which contribute to this, without any consultation with families, because obviously they weren't allowed in. And remember, all of this started, the first wave started as the lockdown hit in the UK. They couldn't do it until they closed the doors. Otherwise, families would have been seeing what was happening. It was done under the cover of darkness, like all thieves and murderers operate. And then they knew they couldn't maintain it, so they had to relax things a bit in the summer. And then as soon as the protocols come back in, then the second wave comes back in. It coincides with the protocols. And then after Christmas, what did we get for Christmas, lucky boys and girls? We got an experiment that had never been used on the population ever before. And I don't mean the type of spear, arm spear. I don't mean what it was for, I mean the actual technology, completely novel. It was an experiment. Lockdown was an experiment, never done before. Lab rats, that's how they see you. The lockdown in the UK started on the 22nd of March 2020 vision. The 22nd of March 223 is a significant date relating to the occult, the master puppeteers who really run the show. You'll always find their fingerprints all over things like dates, locations, symbols, times, numbers, whatever. 22nd of March is the official start of the season of sacrifice, an ancient occult ritual where you sacrifice, human sacrifice, to whatever force you believe in, to lay the seeds and sacrifice blood to help give energy and draw on potential for your laying your seeds. Obviously, it's the start of spring, so in simple terms, you're laying your seeds, planting seeds. It's a harvesting rite, ritual, and that just coincidentally was when the lockup was implemented and the mass ritual sacrifice was initiated, and it's 40 days. It goes on to the 1st of May, that whole period. That's pretty much the first wave. And obviously these numbers were pumped out of the television daily, constantly. This must be happening. The television wouldn't lie. Look, 500 people, remember, have died with the thing, not of the thing, with the thing. And this became obvious. They were just labelling everything as that thing. Fall off a ladder, you died with that thing. Knocked over by a bus, you died with that thing. Blew your head off, you died with that thing. This complete theoretical thing only exists in the minds of these men and women. And then when the Britney Spears came for Christmas, the arm Spears, there was a third wave. As soon as that started, another spike. These old, frail people couldn't handle the novel technology. I remember around about this same time, March, February time, into March, it was the elderly who were being given the novel technology, but also NHS workers. And a friend of mine at the time worked in the socialist health system. I'm just going to call it for the purpose of Nazi tube. Socialist health service. He worked there, and he was one of the first, as part of those workers outside of the elderly. They were some of the first younger people to get it, and I clearly remember telling me that so many people were getting sick afterwards. Young, otherwise healthy workers were getting sick and having to have time off work, and it was, like really bad. As in, I think he was quite shocked and surprised that it was having this effect. It didn't deter him, but point is that was his testimony, and so what's my point? My point is, imagine us knocking people, young, fit, presumed healthy people, knock them out for maybe a week at a time. Imagine what it's doing to the very old and frail. It's blatantly obvious what was going on, but they had a cover story, and the cover story was you weren't deemed as having had the full treatment until you had 2, and then even then it had to be sort of something like 14 days after that or something. So this window, and I can't remember how long it was between each, probably 2 weeks. I seem to love the number 2. 2 weeks to flatten the curve, remember that? Anyway, might not be exactly right on this, but it was something like 2 weeks between each assault in the arm, without your fully informed consent. 2 weeks between each assault, and then 2 weeks after that you were deemed having been fully assaulted. And so there's a 4-week window where they can record the demise of that person as being not fully assaulted or not assaulted at all, because they weren't. For that 4 weeks they weren't classed as that, and obviously they would then just strike them down as having succumbed to the theoretical thing, more for the numbers. So that was your third wave, and there was so many stories as well where the nurse and staff had done their utmost to protect the elderly for that sort of year running up to the assault coming out, the arm assault. Like, they thought they were protecting them, as in doing all the nonsense. So they had done their utmost to protect them for the best part of a year, and probably the reason they weren't getting sick was because they hadn't been, affected by the fear porn. because obviously one of the symptoms of fear is shortness of breath. And stick that in with the nocebo effect and epigenetics, and you can literally make people ill. So that's probably why these older people hadn't gotten sick, because for whatever reason they weren't petrified. But anyway, once they had the arm assault, they died soon after. And then the staff were told that there was a outbreak in the home. And there was an outbreak, all right, of arm assaults. Outbreak of complete Nazis with weapons. They were told there was an outbreak, and then they were all labelled as having succumbed to the theoretical thing, probably through the nonsense test, which was ramped up to give a false positive, or maybe it was picking up on the genetic code of what was now in their cells. That's where the genetic code of the theoretical thing is. It's in a computer. It's not in nature. It's in a computer, and then it's put into the novel technology, or a piece of it, the most toxic piece of the code, and then that's put into the assault weapon, and then you're assaulted with it, and that genetic code is now in your cells being produced. So you would get a positive nonsense test, wouldn't you? So that was the third wave, and that's why people were mysteriously having outbreaks in the homes. It was an assault. So all of these killings are all by us, are all by the socialist, the national socialist health, national socialists. The tactics for everybody else, so that was the illusion of the waves. But even with that, and how to make flu disappear, anybody with flu symptoms or any demises due to what would ordinarily be flu were labelled the same. The thing, it's like, people can't see it, or they just swallow what the cover story is. Worldwide, that was worldwide. Flu hung up its boots for a year or so. People just swallowed the reasons for all these abnormalities, which are because they've got no critical thinking. So for the rest of us who we're never really going to get sick, because there's nothing out there, you would get people, getting sick as you would expect, normal amounts of people being ill, but they would convince themselves it would be the thing. So, and then they made up the complete pseudoscience that you can have the thing without showing any signs of it, i.e. there's nothing wrong with you. That's called nothing wrong with you. It's total nonsense. That was another fraudulent piece of science based on somebody had, I can't quite recall, it was something like somebody had reported as getting ill after they had been around somebody else, but then as it turned out, and that person was showing no signs, but then it turned out that it wasn't the thing she had, it was something else. Anyway, you need to look that up, how that all came about. But it was basically BS. But it by the time something is shown to be BS, it's already out there, and they run with it because they needed that BS to convince everybody else in the population why they were getting these positive results and there was nothing wrong with them, and why people around them were getting maybe they were showing a few symptoms of something, but they couldn't work out why, because nobody else in the house had it. So you would go, well, I haven't getting it from them, so how the hell am I getting it? Maybe this is just bullshit. Maybe this is not how you get sick. You know, they needed a cover story for people asking those sorts of questions. So they made up this absolute nonsense that you can have a disease and it doesn't affect you. Anyway, so so they had that cover story for that, and people were just doing it willy-nilly. They were just getting tested and they wanted it. They actually wanted it. I want this thing, and I want to be able to put it on Facebook and virtue signal and get sympathy because I'm an insecure little child. I want this thing. It's like you know, I'm going to butcher this. What's that term for people who make up that they're ill? Munchausen, something like that. By proxy is when you do it with your child and you just pretend that they're ill to get attention, if I've recalled that correctly. So it's that, wanting to get ill for attention. Feel like, because they made it feel like a war effort, the propaganda. You wanted to be in the war effort, and instead of going on the front line, you're shivering in the corner of your bedroom like a spineless coward, just because you stuck fucking swab up your nose and sent it away for some fake result. You now think you're in the war effort. You're not. You're a coward. You're a total ignorant, mind-controlled coward. And that's how they got people. People were already so ripe for this sort of psyop because they are so insecure and so childish in their mentality. The engineered personalities that have been programmed into them by the overlords. They were ripe for this. That's why it was done when it was done. because the population was ripe for this type of psyop. They're not going to do something. They're not going to carry out one of these huge worldwide psyop unless they've done the homework and they know what the general mindset and the general level of consciousness is of the population. So you had people wanting it, and again, epigenetics. If you want something so bad, your body will produce it. That's the nocebo effect. Just like the nocebo, but the opposite. That's how and why that works. Epigenetics. And then, you had people were just doing this test, and it was like, why are you doing it? If nobody did the test, they wouldn't be able to do anything. And people just couldn't work this out because they were so convinced that there was an invisible threat out there and that they were going to kill their family because they're fucking ignorant and stupid. And they were taking this stupid, ridiculous test, shoving these things up their nose and right at the back of their throat. I mean, I was going to say you've got to be careful, it would cross the blood-brain barrier, but there is no brain, so it wouldn't do any harm. But they're shoving these things right up their nose, right at the back of their throat, right? And then they're fucking surprised when they lose their sense of smell or their sense of taste. And then you wonder, your body's going, what the fuck are you doing? And then I knew this one couple who had 2 kids, young, 11 and 13 or 14. And the mother, I mean, this is no mother. This is a complete Satanist, what I'm about to describe here. The mother was so desperate to send her kids to school. I'm not really sure why, because if I recall rightly, she wasn't working. But no, she wants her kids at school because she hasn't got the ability, the patience, or even the desire at home to teach them anything at home. She wants rid of them so she can get on with her satanic lifestyle. But she was so desperate to send her kids to school. One of them is got some sort of, should I just say, like, learning disabilities. He's a bit slow on the uptake, let's put it that way. I mean no offence by that, I'm just putting that, I've just described it in that way. Poor lad. She's shoving and she's describing this to us after the event, because these Satanists, they want to get their kids off to school and they'll comply with things, but they were still coming to our house. I mean, we didn't give a shit because it was all nonsense, but they were going along with it, but they didn't really believe it. They were still coming to our house, they were still socialising, doing everything against the rules, but they were only doing that when no one was watching. As soon as they're out there in the public, they're virtue signalling. So many people did this because that is complete hypocrites. And children, they've got no backbone. They've got no backbone to stand up when they know something is wrong. They know it's BS, but they've got absolutely no courage whatsoever. So anyway, she's telling us this story, sticking this swab thing up her son's nose to the point where he's crying. He's literally crying. Stop, mummy, stop. She didn't. I think at this, I can't remember if I'm remembering rightly. I don't know if his nose bled a little bit. That might be a false memory. But the rest of it isn't. The rest of it is absolutely true. Stop mummy, and crying. Now, I don't know what's sicker. The fact that she's doing this. Well, just don't send him to school then. But she's trying to make it out like it's a virtue. Like, I want him to go to school and he needs his education. Give him that hope. You lazy fucking satanic mindset. Selfish, greedy, spineless narcissist. Pig. Yeah, sure, I don't know what's worse. The fact that she did it to our own child, or the fact that she's telling us as if and she's got no shame. I mean, our faces were just like we were. I remember we were shocked. We spoke about it afterwards, my wife and I, and we were shocked, quite disgusted. But in the moment, we both just did the same thing. We both just stared, gave no reaction. You don't know what to do in that minute. It's almost like I'm just going to freeze. Because there's no way I'm giving that any justification or any... So it was like she was trying to get sympathy. This is how hard it was for me. I had to do that until he cried. What? Didn't give her any sympathy, any acknowledgement that it was the right thing to do, but equally we didn't condemn her. And I struggle with things like that now. The fact that I didn't condemn her, but you know, this was all just blowing your mind. Every day there was something new blowing your mind, and it wasn't really the BS coming out of the television. It was the fact that people were lapping it up, and their behaviours were just absolutely bizarre. So that was the length some people were going to. So anyway, what were the tactics for us? Well, how did they do it to us? Well, this is classic cult indoctrination. First, it's the bite. It's been modelled by somebody whose name I can't recall, and it's called the bite model. B is for behaviour. So in order to control people's behaviour, it's like Pavlov's dogs. You give them treats and rewards for good behaviour, and you punish them for bad behaviour. It's like training a dog. Pavlov's dogs, his particular experiment was if you could get the dog to associate the ringing of a bell with eating a treat, then even without the treat was nowhere to be seen. The bell would trigger the dog to produce saliva, and I guess mouth would start watering, even though there's no food, there's no smell, it's just the bell. So, but behaviour control is similar to that. You're just giving people a reward for good behaviour and punishment for bad behaviour, and then the people will start to associate, as soon as they hear what to do, they just associate that, well, that's the good behaviour that we get rewarded for. They don't think whether the behaviour is destructive, whether it's necessary, whether it's harmful, whether it's completely stupid and made up. They just associate the, you know, the rule, the behaviour with a treat. It's like a dog. So that's behaviour. Next is information. So within the cult, you want to absolutely control the information that your cult members or have access to. And that absolutely happened. Censorship. There was many people speaking out, but also providing, many doctors and scientists, experts, whatever, releasing information that completely blew the bullshit narrative out the window. But that was heavily censored. Heavily censored. And what they also do is part of that, but they know the information is going to leak out. They can't do 100% censorship. It's not quite that simple. But so what they do is they tell the cult members that any information from outside cult members is bad. It's bad for the cult, it's bad for the group. And it conditions them to, as soon as they see that information, oh, that's from an outside, that's not an official source, that's from a non-cult member, that's bad. And they did this by just calling everything that went against the official bullshit as a conspiracy theory. And that just programmed people's brains. Anything contrary to what my masters are telling me, my cult leaders, is a conspiracy theorist. Bad. It's information. Thought is just kind of a psychological technique where you're just planting thoughts and belief systems, mindsets into the cult members, using things like peer pressure, groupthink, and as long as this bunch of people say that must be the right way to think, and that's your media and your celebrities and you're bought and paid for doctors or scientists, people who it's not within their own interests to go against the grain or think for themselves. That would be a bad career move. But anyway, you've got these groups of people who help mould the minds, and you could see this, people coming, as soon as you try to give them some information or some data that contradicts what they're being told, you get this is, everybody got this. What university did you go to? What are you an expert in? What you know more than the doctors? And that was the thoughts of being completely planted by the cult. And then E is emotions. Emotions. So things like guilt, shame, and fear. Fear, obviously, stay 2 meters away from, everybody's dangerous, nobody's safe, wear a mask, so many people have died today, don't kill granny, guilt, don't kill granny, all the propaganda on the television, billboards, look into their eyes, and how something like look into their eyes and tell them that you didn't pass this on, or something like that. Guilt and shame. Anybody who wasn't complying were called again conspiracy theorists, anti-vaxxers, far right, shaming these people. Who wants to be called any of those things? Again, it's all building conformity and obedience, the groupthink, the Ash conformity. Everybody thinks like this, so that's how I'm going to think. Nobody wants to feel ashamed and ostracised. Nobody wants to have a guilty conscience and think that they've killed their granny. and and that's it. That was the psyop, and the isolation as well is a psychological warfare technique. Isolating people from their family and friends, and also isolate them from the things that they enjoy doing. Going on holidays, going to shops, going to the pub, whatever. People like me, I couldn't give two hoots. I'm not complying. I'm not complying because I know it's bullshit. And I know it mustn't be good for us. If it takes such a huge, massive psychological operation and a multi-million pound propaganda campaign from the government, I know that it's not good for us. But for most people, isolating them from their creature comforts, it's not going to take long to break down their weak minds. And they did this for long enough for obviously the majority of people to just do it. I just want this over with. Just give us the solution. Give us the solution. Assault me arm. Just whatever. I want me creature comforts back. And that was the psyop. This whole don't kill Granny at Christmas or whatever it was something like hug for Christmas, kill her for New Year. It's absolutely disgusting. Absolutely disgusting. And all of this psychological warfare was done without our consent. There was no consent for the arm assault, no informed consent, and there was no consent for the psychological experiment and these psychological manipulation techniques. No consent for that. That's criminal. That's absolutely criminal. And nobody will ever be held accountable. But this whole give Granny a hug for Christmas, kill her at New Year. I heard a story from, I can't remember where it was from, and I've got no reason to believe that this is completely made up. So, and I'm just going to take it on face value. It's an anecdote. Why, or somebody's story? Why not? Why would it be a lie? Anyway, and actually, I can well imagine it because, well, I'll tell it first. So apparently, there was a young person that this person knew who did spend Christmas with their granny, and they did die over the New Year. And they, because of that campaign, they thought that they had killed their granny, and they ended up coming to an unfortunate self-implicated end. It's just absolutely heartbreaking. Some of the stories that people have just completely forgotten, I probably didn't even know about, because it doesn't affect them. They don't give two shits. They're sitting in the house being a good little boy or a good little girl with them, and without a thought for anybody else. And I know one person personally whose son did that as well. 16, I think he was, and he took himself out during the nonsense. And his dad, the person I know, he said he thinks he does believe it was because of the nonsense and what it was psychologically doing to people. It's absolutely disgusting. And the fact that people just walk around with their fucking heads in the clouds, and they don't even think about this event, let alone talk about it, let alone have any consideration for other people. They're just sick, satanic, selfish morons. And I didn't know. I knew one person out of the group of people I was associating with at the time. Let me just get this absolutely right in my head. Yeah, out of the group of friends, so-called friends I was associating with at the time, and all family members, both myself, my family members, and my wife's family members, and anybody who I've managed to even broach the subject with at work. Not a huge amount of people, but I know one other. My wife is one. I know one other person, other than that, who didn't succumb to the arm assault. And you just think, and they're all just walk around oblivious, without a care in the world. This is the state. This is the state of humanity. Why would I have any faith in these collective bunch of childish, arrogant, immoral, swamp dwellers? That's where they are in terms of their consciousness. They're in a swamp. And I don't care how intellectual they are. Who's got this job? Who's got that job? They've got zero holistic intelligence. Zero.